said his father with difficulty, the pipe in his hand going dead. Go on. No, thought Will. Let Jim and me be cannibalized, but no one else. Anyone that knows gets hurt, so no one else must know. Aloud he said, "In a couple days, Dad, I'll tell you everything. I swear. Mom's honor." "Mom's honor," said Dad at last, "is good enough for me." Chapter 28. The night was sweet with the dust of autumn leaves, and smelled as if the fine sands of ancient Egypt were drifting to dunes beyond the town. How come, thought Will, at a time like this, I can even think of 4,000 years of dust of ancient people sliding around the world, and me sad because no one notices except me and Dad here, maybe, and even us not telling each other. It was indeed a time between. One second their thoughts all brambled Airedale, the next all silken slumbering cat. It was a time to go to bed, yet still they lingered, reluctant as boys to give over and wander in wide circles to pillow and night thoughts. It was a time to say much, but not all. It was a time after first discoveries, but not last ones. It was wanting to know everything and wanting to know nothing. It was the new sweetness of men starting to talk as they must talk. It was the possible bitterness of revolution. So while they should have gone upstairs, they could not depart this moment that promised others on not so distant nights, when man and boy becoming man might almost sing. So Will at last said carefully, "Dad, am I a good person?" "I think so. I know so, yes." Will that help when things get really rough?" "It'll help." "Will it save me if I need saving? I mean, if I'm around bad people and there's no one else good around for miles, what then?" "It'll help." "That's not good enough, Dad." "Good is no guarantee for your body. It's mainly for peace of mind." "But sometimes, Dad, aren't you so scared that even the mind isn't peaceful?" His father nodded, his face uneasy. "Dad," said Will, his voice very faint, "are you a good person?" "To you and your mother, yes, I try. But no man's a hero to himself. I've lived with me a lifetime, Will. I know everything worth knowing about myself." "And adding it all up?" "The sum? As they come and go, and I mostly sit very still and tight, yes, I'm all right." "Then, Dad," asked Will, "why aren't you happy?" The front lawn at, let's see, 1:30 in the morning is no place to start a philosophical. I just wanted to know, it's all." There was a long moment of silence. Dad sighed. Dad took his arm, walked him over, and sat him down on the porch steps, relit his pipe. Puffing, he said, "All right. Your mother's asleep. She doesn't know we're out here with our tomcat talk. We can go on. Now, look, since when did you think being good meant being happy?" "Since always." "Since now, learn otherwise. Sometimes the man who looks the happiest in town with the biggest smile is the one carrying the biggest load of sin. There are smiles and smiles. Learn to tell the dark variety from the light. The seal barker, the laugh shouter, half the time he's covered up. He's had his fun and he's guilty. And men do love sin. Will, oh, how they love it, never doubt, in all shapes, sizes, colors, and smells. Times come when troughs, not tables, suit our appetites. Hear a man too loudly praising others, and look to wonder if he didn't just get up from the sty. On the other hand, that unhappy, pale, put-upon man walking by who looks all guilt and sin, why, often that's your good that you achieve will. For being good is a fearful occupation. You strain at it and sometimes break into it. I know of you. You work twice as hard to be a farmer as to be his hog. I suppose it's thinking about trying to be good makes the crack run up the wall one night. A man with high standards, too, the least hair falls on him, sometimes wilts his spine. He can't let himself alone, won't lift himself off the hook if he falls just a breath from grace. Oh, it would be lovely if you could just be fine, act fine, not think of it all the time. But it's hard, right? With the last piece of lemon cake waiting in the icebox, middle of the night, not yours, but you lie awake in a hot sweat for it, eh? Do I need to tell you? Or a hot spring day, noon. There you are, chained to your school desk, and away off there goes the river, cool and fresh over the rock wall. Boys can hear clear water like that miles away. So, minute by minute, hour by hour, a lifetime. It never ends, never stops. You got the choice this second, now this next, and the next after that. Be good, be bad. That's what the clock ticks. That's what it says in the ticks. Run, swim, or stay hot. Run, eat, or lie hungry. So you stay. But once stayed will, you know the secret, don't you? Don't think of the river again, or the cake, because if you do, you'll go crazy. Add up all the rivers never swum in, cakes never eaten, and by the time you get my age, Will, it's a lot missed out on. But then you console yourself, thinking the more times in, the more times possibly drowned or choked on lemon frosting. But then, through plain dumb cowardice, I guess, maybe you hold off from too much. Wait, play it safe. Look at me. Married at 39, Will. 39. But I was so busy wrestling myself 2 falls out of 3, I figured I couldn't marry until I had licked myself good and forever. Too late, I found you can't wait to become perfect. You got to go out and fall down and get up with everybody else. So at last, I looked up from my great self-wrestling match one night when your mother came to the library for a book and got me instead. And I saw then and there you take a man half bad and a woman half bad and put their 2 good halves together, and you got one human all good to share between. That's you, Will, for my money. And the strange thing is, son, and sad too, though you're always racing out there on the rim of the lawn and me on the roof using books for shingles, comparing life to libraries, I soon saw you were wiser, sooner and better than I will ever be. Dad's pipe was dead. He paused to tap it out and reloaded. No, sir, Will said. Yes, said his father. I'd be a fool not to know I'm a fool. My one wisdom is you're wise. Funny, Will said after a long pause. You've told me more tonight than I've told you. I'll think some more. Maybe I'll tell you everything at breakfast, okay? I'll be ready if you are. Because I want you to be happy, Dad. He hated the tears that sprang to his eyes. I'll be all right, Will. Anything I could say or do to make you happy, I would. Will you? Will ya? Dad lit his pipe again and watched the smoke blow away in sweet dissolvings. Just tell me I'll live forever. That would do nicely. His voice, Will thought. I never noticed. It's the same color as his hair. Pa, he said, don't sound so sad. Me? I'm the original sad man. I read a book and it makes me sad. See a film, sad. Plays, they really work me over. Is there anything, said Will, doesn't make you sad? One thing, death. Boy, Will started. I should think that would. No, said the man with the voice to match his hair. Death makes everything else sad, but death itself only scares. If there wasn't death, all the other things wouldn't get painted. And Will thought, here comes the carnival. Death like a rattle in one hand, life like a candy in the other. Shake one to scare you, offer one to make your mouth water. Here comes the sideshow, both hands full. He jumped to his feet. Dad, oh, listen. You'll live forever. Believe me or your son. Sure, you were sick a few years ago, but that's over. Sure, you're 54, but that's young. And another thing. Yes, Will. His father waited for him. He swayed. He bit his lips, then blurted out, don't go near the carnival. Strange, his father said. That's what I was going to tell you. I wouldn't go back to that place for $1 billion. But Will thought that won't stop the carnival searching through town to visit me. Promise, Dad? Why don't you want me to go there, Will? That's one of the things I'll tell tomorrow or next week, next year. You just got to trust me, Dad. I do, son. Dad took his hand. It's a promise. As if at a signal, both turned to the house. The time was up. The hour was late. Enough had been said. They properly sensed they must go. The way you came out, said Dad, is the way you go in. Will walked silently to touch the iron rungs hidden under the rustling ivy. Dad, you won't pull these off? Dad probed one with his fingers. Someday, when you're tired of them, you'll take them off yourself. I'll never be tired of them, Dad. Is that how it seems? Yes, to someone at your age, you figure you'll never get tired of anything.
Hey, Bafumi.
All right, son. Up you go. He saw how his father looked up along the ivy and the hidden path. You want to come up this way too? No, no, his father said quickly. Because
Thanks, Graphicon.
you're
Hope you're still here, but if not,
That's all.
thanks for showing up, man.
Go. But still, he looked at the ivy stirred in the dark morning light. Will sprang out, grabbed the first, the second, the third rungs, and looked down. From just this distance, Dad looked as if he were shrinking there on the ground. Somehow he didn't want to leave him behind, there in the night, like someone ditched by someone else, one hand up to move, but not moving. Dad, he whispered, you ain't got the stuff. Who says? Cried Dad's mouth silently. And he jumped. And laughing without sound, the boy, the man, swung up the side of the house unceasingly, hand over hand, foot after foot. He heard Dad slip, scrabble, grab. Hold tight, he thought. Ah! The man breathed hard. Eyes tight, Will prayed. Hold. There. Now. The old man gusted out, sucked in, swore in a fierce whisper, then climbed again. Will opened his eyes and climbed, and the rest was smooth, high, higher, fine, sweet, wondrous, done. They swung in and sat upon the sill, same size, same weight, colored same by the stars, and sat embraced once more with grand, fine exhaustion, gasping on huge engulfed laughs which swept their bones together. And for fear of waking God, country, wife, Mom and Hell, they snug-clapped hands to each other's mouths, felt the vibrant, warm hilarity fountained there, and sat one instant longer, eyes bright with each other, and wet with love. Then, with a last strong clasp, Dad was gone, the bedroom door shut. Drunk on the long night's doings, lulled away from fear toward better, grander things found in Dad, Will slung off lid-falling clothes with tipsy arms and delightfully aching legs, and, like a fall of timber, chopped himself to death. Chapter 29. He slept for exactly 1 hour, and then, as if remembering something he had only half seen, he woke, sat up, and peered out at Jim's rooftop. "The lightning rod!" he yelped. "It's gone!" Which indeed it was. Stolen? No. Jim take it down? Yes. Why? For the shucks of it. Smiling, he had climbed to scuttle the iron, dare any storm to strike his house. Afraid? No. Fear was a new electric power suit Jim must try besides. Jim. Will wanted to smash his confounded window. Go nail the rod back. Before morn, Jim, the blasted carnival will send someone to find where we live. Don't know how they'll come or what they'll look like. Lord, your roof's so empty. Clouds are moving fast. That storm's rushing at us, and Will stopped. What sort of noise does a balloon make adrift? None. No, not quite. It noises itself. It soughs, like the wind billowing your curtains, all white as breaths of foam. Or it makes a sound like the stars turning over in your sleep. Or it announces itself like moonrise and moonset. That last is best. Like the moon sailing the universal deeps, so rides a balloon. How do you hear it? How are you warned? The ear, does it hear? No. But the hairs on the back of your neck and the peach fuzz in your ears, they do. And the hair along your arms sings like grasshopper legs, frictioned and trembling with strange music. So you know, you feel, you are sure, lying in bed, that a balloon is submerging the ocean sky. Will sensed a stir in Jim's house. Jim, too, with his fine dark antennae, must have felt the waters part high over town to let a leviathan pass. Both boys felt a shadow bulk the drive between houses. Both flung up their windows. Both poked their heads out. Both dropped their jaws in surprise at this friendly, this always exquisite timing, this delightful pantomime of intuition, of apprehension, their tandem teamwork over the years. Then, silver-faced, for the moon was rising, both glanced up, as a balloon wafted over and vanished. "Holy cow! What's a balloon doing here?" Jim asked, but wished no answer. For peering, they both knew the balloon was searching, the best searching. No car motor racket, no tires whining asphalt, no footstep street. Just the wind, clearing a great Amazon from the clouds for a solemn voyage of wicker basket and storm sail riding over. Neither Jim nor Will crashed his window or pulled his shade. They simply had to stay motionless, waiting, for they heard the noise again, like a murmur in someone else's dream. The temperature dropped 40 degrees, because now the storm-bleached balloon, whisper-curled, plummet-sank softly down, its elephant shadow cooling gemmed lawns and sundials as they flaunted their swift gaze high through that shadow. And what they saw was something akimbo and a rustle in the down-hung wicker carriage. Was that head and shoulders? Yes, with the moon like a silver cloak thrown up behind. Mr. Dark, thought Will. The Crusher, thought Jim. The Wart, thought Will. The skeleton, the lava sipper, the hanging man, Monsieur Guillotine. No, the dust witch. The witch who might draw skulls and bones in the dust, then sneeze it away. Jim looked to Will and Will to Jim. Both read their lips. The witch. But why a wax crone flung out in a night balloon to search, thought Will. Why none of the others with their lizard venom, wolf fire, snake pit eyes? Why send a crumbled statue with blind mute lashes sewn tight with black widow thread? And then, looking up, they knew. For the witch, though peculiar wax, was peculiarly alive. Blind, yes, but she thrust down rust-splotched fingers which petted, stroked the sluices of air, which cut and splayed the wind, peeled layers of space, blinded stars, which hovered and danced, then fixed and pointed, as did her nose. And the boys knew even more. They knew that she was blind, but special blind. She could dip down her hands to feel the bumps of the world, touch house roofs, probe attic bins, reap dust, examine drafts that blew through halls, and souls that blew through people. Drafts vented from bellows to thump wrist, to pound temples, to pulse throat, and back to bellows again. Just as they felt that balloon sift down like an autumn rain, so she could feel their souls disinhabit, re-inhabit, fabulous nostrils. Each soul, a vast warm fingerprint, felt different. She could roil it in her hand like clay. Smelled different. Will could hear her snuffing his life away. Tasted different. She savored them with her raw-gummed mouth, her puff-addered tongue. Sounded different. She stuffed their souls in one ear, tissued them out the other. Her hands played down the air, one for Will, one for Jim. The balloon shadow washed them with panic, rinsed them with terror. The witch exhaled. The balloon, freed of this small sour ballast, uprose. The shadow passed. "Oh, God," said Jim. "Now they know where we live." Both gasped. Some monstrous baggage brushed and dragged across the shingles of Jim's house. "Will, she's got me." "No, I think—" The drag, brush, rustle scurried from bottom to top of Jim's roof. Then Will saw the balloon whirl up, fly off toward the hills. "She's gone. There she goes. Jim, she did something to your roof. Shove the monkey pole over." Jim slid the long, slender clothesline pole over. Will fixed it on his sill, then swung out, hand over hand, swung until Jim pulled him through his window, and they barefooted it into Jim's clothes closet, and boosted and hoisted each other up inside the attic that smelled like lumber mills, cold, dark, and too sunny. Perched out on the high roof, shivering, Will cried, "Jim, there it is!" And there it was, in the moonlight. It was a track, like a snail paints on a sidewalk. It blistered. It was silver slick. But this was a path left by a gigantic snail that, if it existed at all, weighed 100 pounds. The silver ribbon was a yard across. Starting down at the leaf-filled rain trough, the silver track shimmered to the rooftop, then tremored down the other side. "Why?" gasped Jim. "Why?" Easier than looking for house numbers or street names, She marked your roof so you can see it from miles around, night or day. Oh my gosh. Jim bent to touch the track. A faint, evil-smelling glue covered his finger. Will, what'll we do? I got a hunch, the other whispered. They won't be back till morning. They can't just start a rumpus. They got some plan. Right now, there's what we do. Coiled across the lawn below like a vast boa constrictor waiting for them was the garden hose. Will was gone, down, fast, and didn't knock anything over or wake anyone up. Jim on the roof was surprised in no time at all when Will came scuttling up, all panting teeth, the water-fizzing hose in his fist. Will, you're a genius. Sure, quick. They dragged the hose to drench the shingles, wash the silver, flood the evil mercury paint away. Working, Will glanced off at the pure color of night turning toward morn, and saw the balloon trying to make decisions on the wind. Did it sense? Would it come back? Would she mark the roof again and they have to wash it off, and she mark it and they wash it until dawn? Yes, if need be. If only, thought Will, I could stop the witch for good. They don't know our names or where we live. Mr. Cougar's too near dead to remember or tell. Dwarf, if he is the lightning rod man, is mad, and God willing won't recollect. They won't dare bother Miss Foley until morning. So, grinding their teeth way out in the meadows, they sent the dust witch to search. I'm a fool, grieved Jim quietly, rinsing the roof where the lightning rod had been. Why didn't I leave it up? Lightning hasn't struck yet, Will said, and if we jump lively, it won't. Now, over here. They showered the roof. Below, someone put down a window. Mom, Jim laughed bleakly. She thinks it's raining. Chapter 30. The rain ceased. The roof was clean. They let the hose snake away to thump on the night grass 1,000 miles below. Beyond town, the balloon still paused between unpromising midnight and promised and hoped for sun. Why is she waiting? Maybe she smells what we're up to. They went back down through the attic, and soon were in separate rooms and beds after many fevers and chills of talk, and now lay quietly separate, listening to hearts and clocks beat too quickly toward dawn. Whatever they do, thought Will, we must do it first. He wished the balloon might fly back. The witch might guess they had washed her mark off and soar down to trace the roof again. Why? Because he found himself staring at his Boy Scout archery set, the big, beautiful bow and quiver of arrows arranged on the east wall of his room. Sorry, Dad, he thought, and sat up smiling. This time it's me out alone. I don't want her going back to report on us for hours, maybe days. He grabbed the bow and quiver from the wall, hesitated, thinking, then stealthily ran the window up and leaned out. No need to holler loud and long, no. But just think real hard. They can't read thoughts, I know. That's sure, or they wouldn't send her, and she can't read thoughts. But she can feel body heat and special temperatures and special smells and excitements. And if I jump up and down and let her know just by my feeling good about having tricked her, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, said a drowsy clock chime off in another land. Witch, he thought, come back. Witch, he thought louder, and let his blood pound the roofs clean. Here, we made our own rain. You got to come back and remark it. Witch. And the witch moved. He felt the earth turn under the balloon. Okay, witch, come on. It's just me, the no-name boy. You can't read my mind. Here's me spitting on you. Hears me yelling, "We tricked you," and the general idea gets through. So come on, dare, double dare you. Miles away, there was a gasp of a scent rising, coming near. Holy cow, he thought suddenly. I don't want her back to this house. Come on! He thrashed into his clothes. Clutching his weapons, he aped down the hidden ivy rungs and dogged the wet grass. Which, here, he ran, leaving patterns, ran, feeling crazy fine, wild as a hare who has chewed some secretly delicious, sweetly poisonous root that now gallops in berserk. Knees striking his chin, shoes crushing wet leaves, he soared over a hedge, his hands full of bristly porcupine weapons, fear and joy a tumble of mixed marbles in his mouth. He looked back. The balloon swung near. It inhaled, exhaled itself along from tree to tree, from cloud to cloud. Where am I going? He thought. Wait, the Redmond house, not lived in years. 2 blocks more. There was the swift shush of his feet in the leaves, and the big shush of the creature in the sky, while moonlight snowed everything and stars glittered. He pulled up in front of the Redmond house, a torch in each lung, tasting blood, crying out silently, "Here! This is my house!" He felt a great river change its bed in the sky. Good, he thought. His hand turned the doorknob of the old house. Oh God, he thought. What if they are inside, waiting for me? He opened the door on darkness. Dust came and went in that dark, and the harp-string gesticulation of spiders. Nothing else. Will jumped 2 at a time up the crumbling stairs, around and out on the roof where he stashed his weapons behind the chimney, and stood tall. The balloon, green as slime, printed with Titan pictures of winged scorpions, ancient phoenixes, smokes, fires, clouded weathers, swung its wicker basket, wheezing down. Which, he thought, here. The dank shadow struck him like a batwing. Will toppled. He flung up his hands. The shadow was almost black flesh striking. He fell. He clutched the chimney. The shadow draped him, hushing down. It was cold as a sea cave in that cloud dark. But suddenly the wind of itself veered. The witch hissed in frustration. The balloon swam a washing circle up around. The wind, thought the boy wildly. It's on my side. No, don't go, he thought. Come back. For he feared she had smelled his plan. She had. She itched for his scheme. She snuffed. She gasped at it. He saw the way her nails filed and scraped the air as if running over grooved wax to seek patterns. She turned her palms out and down, as if he were a small stove burning softly somewhere in another world, and she came to warm her hands at him. As the basket swung in an up-glided pendulum, he saw her squinched, blind-sewn eyes, the ears with moss in them, the pale, wrinkled apricot mouth mummifying the air it drew in, trying to taste what was wrong with his act, his thought. He was too good, too rare, too fine, too available to be true. Surely she knew that. And knowing it, she held her breath, which made the balloon suspend itself, half between inhale and exhale. Now, tremulously, experimentally, daring to test, the witch inhaled. The balloon, so weighted, sank. Exhaled, so freed of vapor, the craft ascended. Now, the waiting, the holding of dank, sour breath in the wry tissues of her childlike body. Will waggled his fingers, thumb to nose. She sucked air. The weight of this one breath skimmed the balloon down. Closer, he thought. But, careful, she circled her craft, scenting the sharp adrenaline wafted from his pores. He wheeled, following as the balloon spun, and him reeling. You, he thought, you want me sick. Spin me, will you? Make me dizzy? There was one last thing to try. He stood very still, with his back to the balloon. Which, he thought, you can't resist. He felt the sound of the green slime cloud, the kept bag of sour air, the squeal and stir of mouse wicker on wicker as the shadow cooled his legs, his spine, his neck, close. The witch took air, weight, night burden, star and cold wind ballast. Closer. Elephant shadow stroked his ears. He nudged his weapons. The shadow engulfed him. A spider flicked his hair. Her hand? Choking a scream, he spun. The witch leaned out, was mere foot away. He bent. He snatched. The witch tried to scream out breath when she smelled, felt, knew what he held tight. But, in reaction, horrified, she seized the breath, sucked weight, burdened the balloon. It dragged the roof. Will pulled the bowstring back, freighted with single destruction. The bow broke in two pieces. He stared at the unshot arrow in his hands. The witch let out her breath in one great sigh of relief and triumph. The balloon swung up. It struck him with its dry, rattle-chuckling, heavy-laden basket. The witch shouted again with insane happiness. Clutched to the basket rim, Will, with one free hand, drew back, and with all his strength threw the arrowhead flint up at the balloon flesh. The witch gagged. She tore at his face. Then the arrow, a long hour it seemed in flight, razored a small vent in the balloon. Rapidly, the shaft sank as if cutting a vast green cheese. The surface slit itself further in a wide, ripping smile across the entire surface of the gigantic pear, as the blind witch gabbled, moaned, blistered her lips, shrieked in protest, and Will hung fast, hands gripped to wicker, kicking legs as the balloon wailed, whiffled, guzzled, mourned its own swift, gaseous death, as dungeon air raved out, as dragon breath gushed forth, and the bag, thus driven, retreated up. Will let go. Space whistled about him. He turned, hit shingles, fell skidding down the inclined ancient roof, over down to rim, to rain spout, where feet first he spilled into further emptiness, yelling, clawed at the rain gutter, held, felt it groan, give way, as he swept the sky to see the balloon whistling, wrinkling, flying up like a wounded beast to evacuate its terrified exhalations in the clouds. A gunshot mammoth, not wanting to expire, yet in terrible flux, coughing out its stinking winds. All this in a flash. Then Will flailed into space, with no time to be glad for a tree beneath when it netted him, cut him, but broke his fall with mattress, twig, branch, and limb. Like a kite, he was held face up to the moon, where, at his exhausted leisure, he might hear the last witch lamentations for a wake in progress, as the balloon spiraled her away from house, street, town, with inhuman mourns. The balloon smiled. The balloon rip was all-encompassing now as it wandered in deliriums to die in the meadows from which it had come, sinking down now beyond all the sleeping, ignorant, and unknowing houses. For a long while, Will could not move. Buoyed in the tree branches, afraid he might slip through and kill himself on the black earth below. He waited for the sledgehammer to subside in his head. The blows of his heart might jar him loose, crash him down, but he was glad to hear them, know himself alive. But then, at last, gone calm, he gathered his limbs, most carefully searched for a prayer, and climbed himself down through the tree. Chapter 31. Nothing much else happened all the rest of that night. Chapter 32. At dawn, a juggernaut of thunder wheeled over the stony heavens in a spark-throwing tumult. Rain fell softly on town cupolas, chuckled from rainspouts, and spoke in strange subterranean tongues beneath the windows where Jim and Will knew fitful dreams, slipping out of one, trying another for size, but finding all cut from the same dark, moldered cloth. In the rustling drumbeat, a second thing occurred. From the sodden carnival grounds, the carousel suddenly spasmed to life. Its calliope fluted up malodorous steams of music. Perhaps only one person in town heard, and guessed that the carousel was working again. The door to Miss Foley's house opened and shut. Her footsteps hurried away along the street. Then the rain fell hard as lightning did a crippled dance down the now totally revealed, now vanishing forever land. In Jim's house, in Will's house, as the rain nuzzled the breakfast windows, there was a lot of quiet talk, some shouting, and more quiet talk again. At 9:15, Jim shuffled out into the Sunday weather, wearing his raincoat, cap, and rubbers. He stood gazing at his roof, where the giant snail track was washed away. Then he stared at Will's door to make it open. It did. Will emerged. His father's voice followed. "Want me to come along?" Will shook his head firmly. The boys walked solemnly, the sky watching them, toward the police station, where they would talk, to Miss Foley's, where they would apologize again. But right now they only walked, hands in pockets, thinking of yesterday's fearful puzzles. At last, Jim broke the silence. "Last night, after we washed off the roof and I finally got to sleep, I dreamed a funeral. It came right down Main Street like a visit. Or a parade? That's it. 1,000 people all dressed in black coats, black hats, black shoes, and a coffin 40 feet long. Criminy. Right. What's 40 feet long needs to be buried, I thought. And in the dream, I ran up and looked in. Don't laugh. I don't feel funny, Jim. In the long coffin was a big, long, wrinkled thing like a prune or a big grape lying in the sun, like a big skin or a giant's head drying. A balloon. Hey," Jim stopped. "You must have had the same dream, but balloons can't die, can they?" Will was silent. "And you don't have funerals for them, do you?" "Jim, darn balloon laid out like a hippo someone leaped the wind out of. Jim, last night, black plumes waving, band banging on black velvet muffled drums with black ivory bones. Boy, boy. Then on top of it, have to get up this morning and tell Mom, not everything, but enough so she cried and yelled and cried some more. Women sure like to cry, don't they? And called me her criminal son. We didn't do anything bad, did we, Will? Someone almost took a ride on a merry-go-round." Jim walked along in the rain. "I don't think I want any more of that." "You don't think? After all this? Good grief, let me tell you. The witch, Jim. The balloon. Last night, all alone, But there was no time to tell it. No time to tell his stabbing the balloon so it gusted away to die in the lonely country, sinking the blind woman with it. No time, because walking in the cold rain now, they heard a sad sound. They were passing an empty lot, deep within which stood a vast oak tree. Under it were rainy shadows and the sound. "Jim," said Will, "someone's crying." "No." Jim moved on. "There's a little girl in there." "No." Jim would not look. What would a girl be doing out under a tree in the rain? Come on. "Jim, you hear her." "No, I don't. But then the crying came stronger across the dead grass, flew like a sad bird through the rain, and Jim had to turn, for there was Will marching across the rubble. "Jim, that voice, I know it. Will, don't go there." And Jim did not move, but Will stumbled and walked until he entered the shade of the raining tree, where the sky fell and was lost in autumn leaves, and crept down at last in shining rivers along the branches and trunk. And there was the little girl, crouched, face buried in her hands, weeping as if the town were gone, and the people in it, and herself lost in terrible woods. And at last Jim came edging up and stood at the edge of the shadow and said, "Who is it?" "I don't know." But Will felt tears start to his eyes as if some part of him guessed. "It's not Jenny Holdridge, is it?" "No." "Jane Franklin?" "No." His mouth felt full of Novocaine. His tongue merely stirred in his numb lips. "No." The little girl wept, feeling them near, but not looking up yet. "Me, me, help me. Nobody'll help me. Me. I don't like this." Then when she had strength enough and was quieter, she turned her face, her eyes almost swollen shut with weeping. She was shocked to see anyone near, then surprised. "Jim! Will! Oh God, it's you!" She seized Jim's hand. He writhed back, yelling, "No, I don't know you, let go." "Will, help me, Jim. Oh, don't go, don't leave," she gasped brokenly, new tears bursting from her eyes. "No, no, don't," screamed Jim. He thrashed, he broke free, fell, leaped to his feet, one fist raised to strike. He stopped, trembling. "Oh, Will, let's get out of here. I'm sorry. Oh, God, God." The little girl in the shadow of the tree flung back, widened her eyes to fix the two in wetness, moaned, clutched herself and rocked back and forth, her own child baby, comforting her elbows. Soon she might sing to herself, and sing that way alone beneath the dark tree, forever. No one able to join or stop that song. "Someone must help me, someone must help her," she mourned as for one dead. "Someone must help her. Nobody will, nobody has. Help her if not me. Terrible, terrible." "She knows us," said Will, hopelessly, half bent down to her, half turned to Jim. "I can't leave her." "Lies," said Jim wildly. "Lies. She don't know us, never saw her before." "She's gone. Bring her back. She's gone. Bring her back," mourned the girl, eyes shut. "Find who?" Will got down on one knee, dared to touch her hand. She grabbed him. Almost immediately, she knew this was wrong, but he tried to tear free, so she let him go, wept, while he waited near, and Jim, far out in the dead grass, called in for them to go. He didn't like it. They must go. "Oh, she's lost," sobbed the little girl. "She ran off in that place and never came back. Will you find her, please? Please?" Shivering, Will touched her cheek. "Hey now," he whispered. "You'll be okay. I'll find help," he said gently. She opened her eyes. "This is Will Halloway, okay? Cross my heart, we'll be back. 10 minutes. But you mustn't go away." She shook her head. "You'll wait here under the tree for us?" She nodded mutely. He stood up. The simple motion frightened her, and she flinched. So he waited and looked at her and said, "I know who you are." He saw the great familiar eyes open gray in the small wounded face. He saw the long rain-washed black hair and the pale cheeks. "I know who you are, but I got to check." "Who'll believe?" she wailed. "I believe," Will said. And she lay back against the tree, her hands in her lap, trembling, very thin, very white, very lost, very small. "Can I go now?" he said. She nodded, and he walked away. At the edge of the lot, Jim stomped his feet in disbelief, almost hysterical with outrage and declamation. "It can't be!" "It is," said Will. "Eyes, that's how you tell. Like it was with Mr. Cougar and the evil boy. There's one way to be sure. Come on." And he took Jim through the town, and they stopped at last in front of Miss Foley's house, and looked at the unlit windows in the morning gloom, and walked up the steps and rang the bell. Once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Very slowly, the front door moved, whining back on its hinges. "Miss Foley?" Jim called softly. Somewhere off in the house, shadows of rain moved on far window panes. "Miss Foley?" They stood in the hall by the bead rain in the entry door, listening to the great attic beams, a shift and a stir in the downpour. "Miss Foley?" Louder. But only the mice in the walls, warmly nested, made sgraffito sounds in answer. "She's gone out to shop," said Jim. "No," said Will. "We know where she is." "Miss Foley, I know you're here," shouted Jim suddenly, savagely, dashing upstairs. "Come on out, you!" Will waited for him to search and drag slowly back down. As Jim reached the bottom of the steps, they both heard the music blowing through the front door, with the smell of fresh rain and ancient grass. The carousel calliope among the hills.
Hey Mo, what's up, man? I've been good. I don't know if you're still here or not.
Stood in the music, as one stands in the rain. "The merry-go-round. They fixed it." Will nodded. "She must have heard the music. Gone out at sunrise. Something went wrong. Maybe the carousel wasn't fixed right. Maybe accidents happen all the time, like to the lightning rod man, him inside out and crazy. Maybe the carnival likes accidents, gets a kick out of them. Or maybe they did something to her on purpose. Maybe they wanted to know more about us, our names, where we live, or wanted her to help them hurt us. Who knows what? Maybe she got suspicious or scared. Then they just gave her more than she ever wanted or asked for. I don't understand." But now, in the doorway in the cold rain, there was time to think of Miss Foley, afraid of mirror mazes. Miss Foley alone not so long ago at the carnival, and maybe screaming when they did what they finally did to her. Around and around, around and around, too many years. More years than she had ever dreamed of, shut away, rubbing her raw, leaving her naked, small, alone, and bewildered, because unknown even to herself, around and around, until all the years were gone and the carousel rocked to a halt like a roulette wheel, and nothing gained and all lost. and nowhere for her to go, no way to tell the strangeness, and nothing to do but weep under a tree, alone in the autumn rain. Will thought this, Jim thought it, and said, "Oh, the poor, we got to help her, Jim. Who else would believe? If she tells anyone I'm Miss Foley, get away, they'd say. Miss Foley's left town, disappeared. Go on, little girl. Oh, Jim, I bet she's pounded a dozen doors this morning wanting help. Scared people with her screaming and yelling, then run off, gave up, and hid under that tree. Police are probably looking for her now, but so what? Just a wild girl crying, and they'll lock her away, and she'll go crazy. That carnival, boy, do they know how to punish so you can't hit back. They just shake you up and change you so no one ever knows you again, and let you run free. It's okay, go ahead, talk, 'cause folks are too scared of you to listen. Only we here, Jim, only you and me. Right now, I feel like I just ate a cold snail raw." They looked back the last time at the shadows of rain crying on the windows inside the parlor, where a teacher had often served them cookies and hot chocolate, and waved to them from the window, and moved tall through the town. Then they stepped out and shut the door and ran back toward the empty lot. "We got to hide her until we can help." "Help?" panted Jim. "We can't help ourselves. There's got to be weapons right in front of us. We're just too blind." They stopped. Beyond the thump of their own hearts, a greater heart thumped. Brass trumpets wailed, trombones blared. A herd of tubas made an elephant charge, alarmed for unknown reasons. "The carnival," gasped Jim. "We never thought. It can come right into town. A parade. Or that funeral I dreamt about for the balloon. Not a funeral, and only what looks like a parade. It's a search for us, Jim, for us, or Miss Foley, if they want her back. They can march down any old street, fine and dandy, and spy as they go, drum and bugle. Jim, we got to get her before they..." And breaking off, they flung themselves down an alley, but stopped suddenly and leaped to hide in some bushes. At the far end of the alley, the carnival band, animal wagons, clowns, freaks and all, banged and crashed between them and the empty lot and the great oak tree. It must have taken 5 minutes for the parade to pass. The rain seemed to move on away, the clouds moving with them. The rain ceased. The strut of drums faded. The boys loped down the alley, across the street, and stopped by the empty lot. There was no little girl under the tree. They circled it, looked up in it, not daring to call a name. Then, very much afraid, they ran to hide themselves somewhere in the town. Chapter 33. The phone rang. Mr. Holloway picked it up. "Dad, this is Willie. We can't go to the police station. We may not be home today. Tell Mom, tell Jim's mom." "Willie, where are you?" "We got to hide. They're looking for us." "Who, for God's sake?" "I don't want you in it, Dad. You got to believe. We'll just hide one day, two, until they go away. If we came home, they'd follow and hurt you or Ma or Jim's mom. I gotta go." "Willie, don't." "Oh, Dad," said Will. "Wish me luck." Mr. Holloway looked out at the trees, the houses, the streets, hearing a faraway music. "Willie," he said to the dead phone, "luck." And he put on his coat and hat and went out into the strange, bright, rainy sunshine that filled the cold air. Chapter 34. In front of the United Cigar Store, on this before-noon Sunday, with the bells of all churches ringing across here, colliding with each other there, showering sound from the sky now that the rain was spent, in front of the cigar store, the Cherokee wooden Indian stood, his carved plumes pearled with water, oblivious to Catholic or Baptist bells, oblivious to the steadily approaching sun-bright cymbals, the thumping pagan heart of the carnival band, the flourished drums, the old womanish shriek of Calliope, the shadow drift of preachers far stranger than he, did not witch the Indian's yellow hawk fierce gaze. Still, the drums did tilt churches, and plummet forth mobs of boys, curious and eager for any change, mild or wild. So, as the church bells stopped up their silver and iron rain, few stiffened crowds became relaxed parade crowds, as